What is up, Noel Nation? It's the guys from Plant the Spear back with you for another episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you all had a great 4th of July, as it is July 5th now, the day after. Hopefully, Michael, none of our listeners' fingers decided to enter the transfer portal.
That's right.
We
still stayed here.
We're all still committed. We still have 10 fingers over here. So hopefully you guys, no one entered the portal for you guys. But man, it was a good holiday, grilling out, eating. That's what I love about the 4th, watching some fireworks. And now that you're past July 4th, man, football season is closing in. We are less than 2 months away. We got ACC Media Days coming up in just a couple weeks. I will be there. This is going to be my chance anyway to talk to the coaches and some players from around the conference that maybe we won't even be a part of, very long. But man, once you get past ACC Media Days, that runs through the third week of July. We're less than a month from kickoff.
That's right.
It is football season closing in on us fast, and I can't wait, man. I'm so excited. I've just been burying my head like an ostrich. I'm burying my head in the sand with preseason content, trying to get things ready for you guys, trying to ramp things up here. But we got some recruiting to talk about to start with. Before we get into that, Michael, how are you, my friend? Hopefully you had a great 4th. We already seen you got all fingers present and accounted for. But how are you, my friend? Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me again, Jesse. Yeah, having the 4th of July was great. Hang out with family, like you said, grilled out, hung out, shot off some fireworks. Maybe not the greatest fireworks, but
right.
I got all my fingers. They're all good. And absolutely ready for just ready for all the content that Plant the Spear is producing you. And it's going to be great. I'm excited for our listeners and readers to just get really entrenched in this 2024 team. And while yes, ACC Media Days and all like that's coming up, and that's really exciting. In 2 weeks, July 16, bro, it's back. College football, NCAA football is back, and I am literally ready to lock myself in my office and play all day. 30 years of dynasty. Let's go, baby.
Man, we've been waiting on this for a long time, and you're starting to see a lot of the stuff leak out about the game, and it looks really good. It looks exciting. I don't know. We may or may not have a show the week that drops because it might just be a live stream of us playing the game the whole time.
That's right.
But man, I am excited. I can't wait for that to come out. Like you said, we are only a few weeks away from that as well. Right. So that's the new NCAA 25 game for those of you that don't know. But let's go ahead and jump into some things. Now, we're going to talk about recruiting. We got some recent commitments. There was, a little bit of fireworks on 4th of July. And then, there was some sparklers that kind of fizzled out here. Right. But before we jump into that, I do just want to say one thing real quick. There has been a report on the baseball side of things that Link Jarrett did sign an extension. And the reason I want to bring this up, man, is there was some rumblings. I never really bought into it that when that Texas A&M job came open that his name was mentioned. We know that he left Notre Dame to come here to be closer to his family. I didn't really see any indication that he was leaving. But I think this is another example of where Michael Alford, one of the best ADs in the game.
That's right.
Just like Norvell with the Alabama situation.
That's right.
Did you think he was going to leave? We don't know. Were there rumors and reports? Sure, there definitely was. There was some smoke to that. So you go ahead and you lock him down with an extension and a raise. Same thing here. His name came up. Look, let's just squash that now and make sure. After the season, the turnaround that they had, you see the direction of the program. You see the direction of both programs. So another strong move by this administration at Florida State to lock down the coaches that they know are going to take care of this program and win a lot of games in the future. So any thoughts on that, man? Just excited to keep him around in Tallahassee.
Oh yeah, man. Love what Link has done. Obviously in year 2, you knew year 1 was going to be a struggle, just trying to get his philosophy and way of playing there and the players there. And you saw it come alive in year 2, getting them back to the College World Series. And, if it wasn't for a blown call, we might've been playing for a national championship, but to lock Link down, like you said, his family's here. He loves here. He played here. In this era of collegiate athletics, even a rumor, man, you don't want to let a rumor just, go. You don't want that smoke to keep bellowing because then it turns into real and then, he's off the Texas A&M. So if it wasn't real, who cares? He deserved the contract. He deserved the extension and congratulations to Link.
Yeah, definitely. And got him a raise too. Because I think it was what the Texas A&M coach was like, I took this job to never take another job and took another job literally the next day.
He needed to fire his PR manager.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, man, I'm just happy to keep him around and excited for the future of this baseball program. You know what else I'm excited for, Michael? and that is the sponsor of today's episode. That's
Let's
Alumni
go.
Hall FSU, where you can get all kinds of great FSU gear. They got stuff for summer so you can survive this heat and still look great in FSU gear. Go check those guys out. If you're in Tallahassee, their location is 1415 Timberlane Road, or you can shop online at alumnihall.com. Navigate over to the FSU page, and don't forget to use code SPEAR to save 10% off your order. And we appreciate you guys supporting those that support us. So let's jump into some commitments. The last episode we did, we talked a lot about recruiting, but here's the thing about recruiting. It can change in an instant, and it changed. Right. I mean, the proverbial ink, we don't actually write out in ink anymore. We type, but by the time the ink had dried on the last story, here I am having to write another one because Florida State gets more commitments. So we're going to talk about those guys today. And it's funny. There was some swings and misses, and we landed some recruits, and it's funny. This is why I tell people, like, I don't get too crazy into recruiting. Obviously, you have to keep up with it when you cover the program. But man, people are like, 1 minute we are to the moon with this program. We miss one recruit and everybody's ready to just jump off a ledge and it's drink bleach and all this. It's crazy, man. It's like, just calm down. It's all right. There's a long time until December on early signing day. We talked about that last time. People live and die with recruiting, and man, it's okay. We've missed on some guys and we've won more games than the programs that they're going to. So with that being said, we will get into the commitments that we got now. First up was Myron Charles, 4-star defensive tackle out of Alpharetta, Georgia, 6'4", 295. He's a top 100 recruit nationally. So this is really huge for this class. 98th nationally, 13th ranked D-line according to the 247 composite, and the 12th best player in Georgia. And, I think really it's a big get for Florida State. You're talking about a guy that from what the scouting report I can read, he's still a little bit raw. He's still got that kind of bull in a china shop where, like, he's got the physical tools. He's just really got to learn how to sharpen his skills and how to use those. But anytime you're getting a kid that is a top 100 recruit, that's a huge land for you guys. He's looking at last year, 29 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss. Only 1.5 sacks, but he did have 4 sacks the year before as a sophomore. He was an all-area selection. So I think you're getting a really good player who, with a year or two of working with that strength and conditioning staff we have in Tallahassee and Odell the GOAT, he's going to be a really good player for you. But I think almost the bigger thing about this commitment is Odell the GOAT is like just telling everybody where they can shove it. Because we talked about this the last episode, man. There has never been a doubt on the development side of things with Odell. They've been able to go get guys like Braden Fisk, Fabian Lovett out of the portal. They've done well with that. But the high school recruiting has always, at least the last 4 to 5 years or so, has been under scrutiny. And so this is big, man. You get 2 blue chip defensive tackles in the class. Of course, you got to stick. But if they do, this will be the first time Florida State has signed 2 blue chip defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen out of high school in the same class since 2017. So this is really big, man. This is that type of, because here's the thing, and I'll kick it to you on this. A lot of these programs, like the Georgias, the Bamas, the Clemsons, you'll see some, maybe they miss on a quarterback here or there. Maybe they have a dominant running back here or there. These dominant programs are still built in the trenches. These are still guys that recruit at a very high level from the high school ranks. And that's where a lot of because you don't see a lot of 5-star, 4-star trench players in the portal. And when they do, they're hard to land because everybody's willing to pay for them. Everybody's fighting for them. So this is big, man, because this offensive line class that you have and the defensive line class that you're putting together could be really transformational for this program. Because, again, if you're going to win on that elite level, it starts in the trenches. And when you look at what everybody else has done, it's been recruited at that high level from the high school ranks in the trenches.
Absolutely. Well, let me just start here, man. OADY. Odell ain't dead yet. Let's go. Like, come on now. Like, everybody's been trying to put his gravestone together, his eulogy together. Oh, we love Odell, and he's a great developer, but he can't recruit no more. OADY. Odell ain't dead yet. That boy has brought in these, just incredible. Myron Charles, the dude, like you said, he's a bull in a china shop. He's just violent. You just look at him and you're like, man, I do not want to line up across that dude. 6'4", 290 pounds from Port Charlotte. Come on now. Port Charlotte be producing them kids. He's explosive at the snap. gosh, he just, he runs. If he gets you in his arms, it's over. You're done with. You're going to the ground. I mean, he's just he's going to be, if they can get him to sign on that dotted line, he's going to be a anchor on that defensive line in the long term. And of course, it just shows that Odell he still has the recruiting prowess. He still has the connections. The product on the field suffered, and so then the recruiting suffered. I mean, they go hand in hand. We've said this over and over again. So I was super excited for Odell. Yeah, I think we were all like, this is a notch for Odell. I think this kid's going to be a great kid, especially under the tutelage of Odell and John Papuchis and that defensive line tag team. So excited for them.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, he goes along with Kevin Wynn, the other 4-star defensive tackle that we talked about. And the thing is, when you look at Myron Charles, if the people who are scouting him that work for the recruiting services that rank him think that he's still kind of raw, and he's a top 100 recruit in the country, that tells you about the upside that he has. So, man, I'm again, this is what this program has needed for a long time. And that's on both sides of the ball. And we're going to talk about a big-time offensive line commitment. But we saw where the offensive line and those trenches, where not having the ability to reload with blue chips in the trenches cost this program for a long time. And so now you're getting to that point with what Alex Atkins has been able to do, and now Odell, this class that he's stacking here. So, man, this can – and the funny thing is, you're hearing a lot of these guys now are starting to go, we know this class can win a national championship if we all band together and play it out like it is. So again, this plays into the momentum to get things going, to get other guys who want to be a part of a winning program. If they all come to Florida State, this class can be really special. And so the next guy that committed that we're going to talk about is 4-star tight end Chase Lofton out of Omaha, Nebraska. Maybe not the guy that you thought out of Omaha. That's normally for baseball talk, but hey, we'll take him. I mean, you're looking at a guy here. This is what I love: 6'6". Give me that big tight end.
Come on now.
But this is a really interesting prospect, Michael, because he's 6'6", 215. So he's a little light in the seat. You got to add a little bit of mass there. But this is something that they talked about in his commitment quotations that he said. He said they plan on, like, this is kind of like a higher upside Kyle Morlock. Now, we don't know what Kyle Morlock's upside could be. He could have a great year this year. But, this is a guy where he's already a 4-star coming in, which I believe if you look at some services, he is still a 3-star. I think a lot of that has to do with the level of competition that he plays against there in Nebraska. It's not very good, but typical to like high school football. When you see one guy who just dominates, I mean, he's obviously the best player on the field in almost every game that they play. So that's where, you're getting ranked even against bad competition. But 6'6", 215, we know he's got to add some weight. So you kind of got that Kyle Morlock-esque commitment here. But they're going to work him outside a lot. He's more of a pass catcher tight end, not a blocker. But he said, once they add some mass to his frame, and he knows that's a goal when he gets on campus in Tallahassee, is to bump that weight up. Then he can start to work inside and be a very versatile tight end for this offense. But this guy, man, I don't know if this was official because I don't think it was like electronically timed, but they said he ran a 4.440 at a Nebraska camp. And it's like, that's freaking moving.
That's fast for a tight end, man.
That's moving. And so when you look at his production over the past 2 seasons, 73 receptions, 1,017 yards, 11 touchdowns. Man, this is a do-it-all type of guy, though. He also kicks for them. He kicks PATs and field goals. He also returns kicks. He has 75 kickoff returns for 3,704 yards, averaging almost 50 yards a return. He's returned 53 punts with an almost 40-yard average. So, I mean, that tells you the athletic ability that this kid has. And so I think this is exciting here because I think you get 2 things out of this kid. If he really has the upside that it looks like, and you get him in the class, you work with him physically, he's that athletic. The challenge here is going to be adding to that frame without killing the athletic ability.
Right.
Because I think you have an opportunity here to almost have a Johnny Wilson type of tight end, a guy who creates that mismatch in the secondary with his size, but also has the athletic ability to just run away from people, to have that good body control that he has. He has strong hands. He can go up and get the ball. So I think this is a guy that can be really special for you as a receiving tight end. And then if you can add that mass and get him down to where he can block too, I think he can be a mismatch machine for you. And when you add him to that class with Landon Thomas that you have already on there, man, this is that tight end room looks a lot better going into the future. Now, I have heard some rumors that Hollis Davidson, 3-star tight end, may be going somewhere else. Probably because you signed him. Maybe they take 2, maybe they don't want to, so maybe he doesn't end up in the class. But either way, you got the 4-star, 311 ranked nationally, 14th ranked tight end in the class, number 2 player in Nebraska. And I think this is a high upside play for you. Landon Thomas I know that's your guy.
That's my
Landon
boy.
Thomas, I feel like was a guarantee. You knew he was going to be good. I think this is a really high upside play that it was a great get for Florida State.
You can see development.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. I like this guy a lot, man. When I was watching the film of him, I thought was really cool was like a lot of downfield blocking, which in Mike Norvell's offense, right? It is imperative that the receivers, that the running backs, that they can get downfield, and they will, as soon as the ball is out, they're going to find somebody to put a hand on it and get them to block. Like, that is important. And I actually saw a lot of that in his film, which I thought was really cool. Yes, I agree with you as well too. He's got to bulk up a little bit. He's got to get a little bit more muscle. As they get with Coach Storms, built by Storms, they'll get in that college weight room, and you'll begin to see kind of that refining of their bodies happen. But yes, as a patch catcher, I mean, he's got that like this is my ball and I'm taking it and ain't nobody getting to it. They can use him obviously in the tight end as he gets better in blocking. He'll get more inside, but then you can split him out wide. I saw many instances where he was split out wide, like a wide receiver running wide receiver routes. And you're just thinking, holy cow, I would not want to be a DB trying to face that dude coming down the pipeline. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. Now, again, he's got Landon Thomas in front of him. But it'll be a great tight end room to develop in. And plus, how much Mike Norvell loves to use the tight end in the offense. You saw that with Jaheim Bell when Jaheim Bell was healthy. You saw Kyle Morlock really step into the Jaheim Bell role, really. And when he wasn't dropping balls, he was being leveraged greatly. You saw when Biscuit, man, all the big plays that Biscuit made when he was there. Like, I mean, you just saw, again, Mike Norvell loves to use the tight end. So as long as Lofton continues to develop and fills out that frame, he's going to have a long, impactful career for Florida State.
Right. And I think it's interesting, too, when you bring up all the variations of players that they have, man, is he can find a way to get you the ball no matter what, no matter what kind of tight end you look like, no matter what your body type. I mean, you got Kyle Morlock, who's kind of that long, lanky guy. I think he came in around 250. So we knew he needed to add mass too to be able to be more of a blocking tight end. Then you bring in Jaheim Bell, who's a 6'2", 6'3" tight end, kind of that shorter, more squatty type of guy. Then you got Biscuit, who's basically an offensive lineman with hands, and he did things that guys that size weren't supposed to do. So it's just, it keeps giving you different sizes, and you see what they do with the tight end no matter who they get. So I'm excited to see this guy. Again, I still think he can be almost like a Johnny Wilson, because Johnny Wilson probably could have played tight end too.
Could have played. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he blocked dudes under the bench. So this is a big get for them. Obviously, like we said, you're going to have to get him on and do some development. But I mean, you're losing Kyle Morlock this year. So you're going to need to restart. You're going to need to reload that tight end room. And so moving down the list to the next one that really this felt like a lock, and that's Gregory Zay Thomas.
Yeah.
You felt like Florida State had to land this guy. I mean, he grew up a Florida State fan. He went to camps at Florida State as a kid, youth camps. He's played at American Heritage. He's a DB that played at American Heritage where, the DB coach was the high school coach. And he's also part of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. So, all signs pointed to FSU, and he makes it official. You end up landing him. So and on top of that, this is a big get because you beat Clemson out.
That's right.
So Clemson's a school that typically has good DBs. You're still kind of battling out for that top dog of the ACC, depending on we may not even be here that long to even figure it out. But you're still kind of battling back and forth with them. So it was a big win against a conference rival. And I think when you look at this guy, he is. It's an interesting prospect. And, when you look at his numbers, I think it's 247 has him ranked like 100 spots higher than everybody else. If you want to maybe pull that up and double check me on that. I think this might have been the one I'm thinking of that's a 3-star in certain places and a 4-star in certain places. And what you're looking at here, what I like about Zay Thomas, first off, that stands out, 6'2", 190. So you get a guy, a DB that has incredible length. I think this is a guy, he's listed as a safety in the 247 recruiting rankings or whatever. He's 290 nationally, the 24th ranked safety, 41st ranked player in the state of Florida. I think where a lot of the opposite side of the coin comes in with him is from the scouting reports that I read, he doesn't have the greatest just athletic ability. Like he doesn't look like an Azaria Thomas where he just moves differently on the field.
Right.
But you got a guy who's long, he's 6'2", he's a rangy corner, he's got great instincts and good footwork to be able to break on the ball. He plays in man, he plays in zone. I think this is a guy where he offers you versatility too. And I think that's what they like about him. He's big enough to play safety. He comes up and run support at high school level, so he's not afraid to get his hands dirty a little bit in the run defense. He can also be that big long corner for you out wide, or he could even step into that nickel role because he's got the size to do it. So I mean, this is a guy that I think is a good pickup. And obviously, if Patrick Surtain thinks he belongs in the class, then I think you go get him. And so, we'll see how it plays out over his last couple seasons of high school. But man, I think this is a good get. He's obviously a 4-star, looking good, man. Again, you had to get him because he's an FSU fan, And I will say this too, from the commitment story that I read on him. It was like he was unranked when he came originally to camp at Florida State. He got invited to the elite camp. So that speaks to this staff's ability to identify talent. I mean, they offered Luke Kromenhawk when he was an unranked backup. So they get him on campus. They get a chance to evaluate him in person. And I think that's important. So then later on down the way, he was at another camp and then he earned the offer. So the eye for talent got him on campus and then his play earned him the offer. So I think this is a good take for Florida State.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the fact that his commitment video was down at the Hard Rock Cafe and it had the big old commits to Florida State and the big Seminole head logo on the huge guitar in Miami. Like, just
one of the coolest commitment videos I've seen.
Yes, it's just perfect that Miami's lit up with Florida State. I loved it. You're right. He is ranked at 190 according to 247 Sports, which is like 100 spots over his national ranking. And so it's interesting that what they see in him is a little bit different than the rest of the recruiting services. So, I think this kid is a freakish athlete. He's got speed, he's got size, he's got technique for a DB. He's got range too. Tackler. Sorry, he can tackle well. Let's go with that. He's good, and he's not afraid to like stick his head in there and bring the pop when he needs to be. And I think that over time caught the eyes of the coaches. Like with a DB, yes, technique is super important, but man, the fact that you're willing to stick your head in there, you're willing to make a tackle. As you said, Patrick Surtain was his high school coach. I mean, this guy knows him. And can we just pause for a second? And just give Patrick Surtain his flowers. I mean, this boy is recruiting his tail off. He's recruiting, right? You talk about a hire. You talk about a gold star elite hire Mike Norvell made. Man, I don't care what you got to do. You got to keep this guy as long as you possibly can. I mean, he is bringing in these top-notch DBs. We're in it for almost every big-time DB you see. And so this kid, I think, is going to be a great kid. Obviously, I think another cool part of that is he's a part of the Seminole tribe, Seminole tribe of Florida, which is incredible. That legacy, that partnership that we have to be able to have one of their own on the team. That's not just like we're just giving you, like, this kid can actually play. Like, man, that's incredible. And I think this kid will be good. He's got things to work on. He's gonna have to grow. Obviously, his technique still needs to grow. His body's gonna need to grow, but I think long term this kid can be an impactful player for Florida State.
Right, and he offers versatility, I think, which is something that we know that they love in the secondary here, because you get guys that have had to move to safety and maybe move back to corner. Just for clarification, he was a coach at his high school, not his high school coach, and I only say that because I know people love to get in the comments.
Yes.
Make sure we know that. But again, I think it's a great get for Florida State, and it's just cool, man. Either way, like you said, the ties to the Seminole tribe of Florida, I think it's awesome to get him. I saw some people say he would be the first one to actually play, but there was another kid that did play for Florida State. But I mean, this guy has a chance to be a starter.
Right.
But yeah, again, man, kudos to Surtain is just really loading up this DB room, and they're developing guys too. I mean, you see the step that they've taken in the pass defense. So I'm going to trust his evaluation on anybody.
That's right.
Now, speaking of another coach who gets his flowers, who's recruiting out here, and that's Alex Atkins. Add another blue chip offensive lineman to this class, and 4-star Peyton Joseph. interior offensive lineman out of Warner Robins, Georgia, 6'3", 309. Big guy, 183 nationally, top 200 kid, number 9 interior offensive line, according to the composite, number 27 player in Georgia. This is a big physical lineman that plays with a meanness about him, which I love. Yeah. That's something, you talked about the last DB where like you like his technique, but it's the ability to put his head in there. Yeah. You can teach technique. Yes. You can't teach being mean and physical and all that type of stuff. And that's what you want from an offensive lineman. And that's what Peyton Joseph brings. He finishes blocks. He has good punch. He can pull and climb to the next level well. He has experience outside, but his measurables, his physical traits project him more to be an inside guy. But from the scouting reports, he does have a high upside with an NFL future as far as his projection goes. Another interesting thing about this guy, speaking of versatility, he can probably, play either guard spot for you, and he can also probably cross-train at center. They're talking about that could be one of his upsides there as well. So he can be a guard-to-guard type of guy for you on the interior. Another win, of course, he was previously committed to your rival, Florida. So now he decommitted before he committed. So it wasn't technically, I guess, a flip. But either way, you're getting a blue chip offensive lineman and you're keeping him out of the hands of another in-state rival. So, man, this is huge. You already got some really good offensive linemen with Solomon Thomas in this class. You got the younger guys like the Lucas Simmons that are already on campus that are working their way up. So, man, you just continue to stock this roster with talented offensive line. And it goes back to what we said earlier about the defensive line commits. You got to stack the trenches with blue chip commitments if you want to compete for a national championship. And that's exactly what they're doing. So they're still in it for 5-star Josh Petty. They're still in it for, a couple other guys on the offensive line. And it's funny because we kind of wondered what had happened the last few years when we were dealing with those sanctions and whatnot. Yeah. And now that maybe we're getting out from under those again, like, let's not ever sleep on what Alex Atkins can do on the recruiting trail. So, man, I'm excited to get Peyton Joseph in the class, and this offensive line class, as it continues to fill out, can be really special. And Peyton Joseph is a big part of that.
Right. Yeah. While this year on the playing field might be a little bit of a show me year for Alex Atkins because of the regression that the offensive line had last season, the recruiting side of things is still top notch. I mean, the guy is still getting these deep and elite players. And like you said, man, I mean, you look at the Michigans, you look at the Georgias and the Alabamas under Nick Saban, because you can't give Kevin or DeBoer the flowers yet. But you look at Alabama under Nick Saban, you look at Georgia and Michigan under Jim Harbaugh, and the thing you notice immediately is the line, the defensive line and the offensive line. That's where it all starts. The skilled players, yes, they're important, but man, if you don't have good offensive linemen, good defensive linemen, you're a pretender. And so Florida State is continually getting better, growing depth. I love this Joseph pickup. I think he's really good. I think, yes, I know they're going to try to a little bit train him in the cross training for a center, but man, as a guard, when you watch his film, you see his footwork when he's pulling. Gosh, you're just like, that's what we've been missing. That's what we need there. He's got violent hands. He's able to get the D tackles out of the play easily. He knows how to leverage. Obviously, we'll say this with every high school recruit, is when they get in that college weight room, you'll see the dynamic of their skill set really grow. Alex Atkins will develop them really well. But I like the initial foundation that you have with this kid. And he's a compliment to the other offensive linemen we already have in this class, Solomon Thomas, and he's a compliment to all the young players we already have on the team as well. You're just starting to see this eliteness. Now you're going to have true competition where you're like, man, this kid might be 1A and this kid is barely 1B, but it's really close. Like, that's the kind of competition you want to have, that they're fighting out each day. And I think Joseph adds to that. And, we beat Mike Norvell's former program, which is interesting that Memphis was a part of this, but hey, we beat him out, and glad to have him on our side.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting with Memphis, but I really think when you look at Memphis, recently they had that massive investment by FedEx into that program. And so I think that maybe they're able to throw some NIL dollars around, but hey, we play Memphis.
They're going to have to,
which is going to be interesting. But yeah, so I mean, it's a big win for you, regardless of who the other team was, because you wanted to get them in the boat. And then, like you said, with the play on the field, they didn't do that great last year. But it's so interesting, man. When you look back at the past few years where we've even had success, and you look at all the other positions, you got 4 stars here, and these blue chip guys there. But then when you look at the offensive line, it's still been a lot of 3-star guys. And so, I mean, I get it, man. Like, we can say all we want. Star ratings don't matter. And of course, you can have a 3-star block up a 5-star. It can happen.
Right.
But the majority of the time, I mean, that's when you see a lot of programs get exposed when you have that overwhelming lopsided advantage in the trenches, like a Georgia TCU.
That's right.
I mean, I know we got smoked by them too, so I hate to even bring up Georgia as an example. We didn't have half our team. TCU
That's
did.
Right. That's
we
right.
had a lot of our offensive line, but you still see where like they just, I mean, you can't block these guys. And so this is what you need, where you're squeezing every last drop you can get out of a lot of the 3-star guys that have experience that you got. Of course, you added some big transfers this year, which are huge. But man, if you can get a lot of blue chip guys to reload with, then that's where you're really going to start to see the trench play take off. And that's what's so exciting for the future of this program. Now, to talk about some other recruiting news here, Trammell Jones Jr., quarterback in the 2025 class, did shut down his recruitment, commits to Florida State. As we said before, man, these are always, the kind of, you shut the door, maybe you didn't lock it. We'll have to wait and see. We did touch on last episode where there was a little bit of uncertainty around his recruitment just with the official visits to Florida. That was kind of what all the big recruiting services were hinting at. Someone had told me in the comments that they thought I was way off base with my opinion, that maybe there was some uncertainty there. And, I wasn't trying to be argumentative, but when I replied to the comment, I said, hey, look, if you have to tell people that you're shutting down your recruitment, that means there's something a little bit uncertain. That means there's something
going on. Exactly.
Right. And so either way, regardless of whether maybe he was just exploring his options, why? Because they had said that behind the scenes, he had always let him know that he's going to be a Seminole, but then he finally shut it down and said, look, I'm not even going to bother with anything else. So it's good to keep him in the class. And I think when you look at the recruiting as a whole, and we're going to talk about both sides of recruiting here in a little bit, but I think when you look at recruiting as a whole, man, they're just killing it right now with positions of need. I mean, you signed a lot of talented wide receivers last year, so you kind of stocked them up with a lot of young guys. Your quarterback room is loaded for the foreseeable future. Granted, you keep everybody committed. You're starting to do that big-time trench recruiting. So at the positions of need, man, you're loading up this roster. Now, there are some positions we need to address, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But it was good to see Trammell Jones Jr. go ahead and shut things down. So that way you're not scrambling, maybe looking for another quarterback or right. Whatever you got to do. But that was nice to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing about Trammell Jones is, listen, I mean, these are high school kids. They're 17, 18, whatever they are. And these programs, I think it was the University of Florida that was really the threat there. They're throwing all these dollar figures, or they're telling these kids, all the things they want to hear. And so, of course, you could be, listen, I love Florida State, but if I was a high school kid and I'm deeply passionate about Florida State, you don't think I'm going to take those visits so I can see what else is out there, so I can get the offer, because, it's money I've never had in my entire lifetime, even though I'm a deeply passionate fan about Florida State. I think we often forget as adults, we think, well, no, if you say you love Florida State, then you should be committed to Florida State. And it's like, yeah, we're adults. Of course we would say that now. But when we were 18, 17, 16, 17, 18, right, we weren't saying that. We were like, yeah, I love Florida State, but how much bag you got? Now, back in our day, we didn't have the money, but, we had the under money. And, but yeah, so I understand Trammell Jones still, looking around a little bit. Obviously, the scuttlebutt was that, Florida was enticing a little bit. But the fact of the matter is that he said he's shutting down the recruit. Now, again, we could say shutting down, respect my decision 1,000%, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter until they sign the dotted line. So Florida State still is going to have to continue to recruit this kid, continue to make sure that he's a priority. And as long as they do that, then I believe that he will be a Seminole at the end of the day.
Definitely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like we said, as long as you have a decent season, it doesn't fall off a cliff and you win 2 games or something. As long as you don't have the season we think Florida's going to have, you're in a pretty good spot there. Now let's talk about the flip side of things, because Florida State did miss out on some recruits. And one of them was pretty much utterly shocking, that you missed out on Tavion Wallace at linebacker. I mean, this was one where you were favored. They went all in on this kid. You felt like you were the favorite to win him.
Yeah.
And you kind of followed it up. Also, I mean, you missed out on the Rainey Sale kid at linebacker, and also Gavin Nix goes to Miami. But I want to talk about a few things here. And this, of course, we're going to talk about Randy Shannon, because that's the elephant in the room that everybody wants to talk about. It was a collective fire Randy day on
it
Twitter.
Was.
and I think I made this equation earlier, or this I made this example earlier when we were talking about this before the show. I think the fire alarm has been pulled. You are alerted to, like, we might have a problem here in recruiting at the linebacker position. It's something we've known about for a long time. This was, it was kind of like, do you smell smoke, Michael? I don't know. Maybe
That's
I smell
right.
it. Now we've pulled the fire alarm because this was one you shouldn't have missed on. But to defend Randy a little bit here, I want to say a couple things. But what I was going to say to that, the fire alarm's been pulled, but I don't believe the building's on fire yet. So I think the reason I say that is, first off, with the Rainey Sale kid, let's work backwards. Let's start with Gavin Nix. He was always projected to Miami. You were never really in the lead for that. Not a huge deal there. The Rainey Sale kid, he's from Washington, from the other side of the country. He committed to a program that just joined the Big Ten, that just played for a national championship. Yes, they have a new coach. The guy was pretty good at Arizona, but that program is in good shape, man. And he's going to have to come thousands of miles across the country to play in Florida when he just can stay home and play for another good program. So that one I can kind of understand as well. But the Tavion Wallace was the one that hurt. And you lost him to Arkansas, which was the head scratcher.
Yeah.
Now, I think when you look at that, to me, and this is my personal opinion, we don't know what happened. I feel like something happened in this recruitment, man. Something, because Georgia and Florida were in on him too. And this is something we talked about when we saw that he committed to Arkansas. That program their coaching staff has like the highest, if there were betting odds on this, and there might be, I don't know, the highest odds to get fired in the country have to be that Arkansas program. And so it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But while your first feeling is to go, well, screw Randy, we need to fire him, we need to make a change and all this stuff. Well, guess what? Georgia, one of the best recruiting staffs in the country, they lost to UF, who may not be the greatest recruiting staff, but they're throwing money at everybody like it's monopoly money. They missed on them too. And so to me, I feel like, man, there just had to be, unless this kid just loves, Arkansas, maybe he loves to shop at Walmart, wants to be close to the Walmart headquarters or something. I don't know. Maybe Walmart dropped a bag on him. Who knows? A Sam's Choice bag. Who knows, man? But something feels weird in this recruitment because, we can say that Florida State prioritized him and you missed out on him, but so did one of the best recruiting staffs in the country. Yeah. So and this is going to lead into another conversation. And maybe you do look at, I will say this, before we're this close to the season, the play on the field at the linebacker position has improved. There's no point in making a change right now. I think that's just silly. You mentioned it before the show. You just signed him to an extension and a raise and all this stuff. Even if you could swap him and Ernie Sims, because we know now that that analyst can coach, you're not going to pay an analyst what he's making. So I think you have to ride it out this year. And let's just say Arkansas staff does get fired. Maybe you end up with the kid in the class anyway. Yeah. So I don't think the house is on fire yet, but I think the alarm has been pulled. But again, man, we talked about this on the last episode, and it's going to lead into our next topic of conversation here. But we don't know Arkansas's situation. We know they're desperate. We know that much.
Right.
You might be recruiting against guys like Georgia or Alabama that can spend a lot of money on their entire roster, but Arkansas may be like, man, we need a big win somewhere on the recruiting challenge. Let's throw a giant bag at this kid and let's see if we can win him. Yeah. We don't know the situation, but it may have been. Either way, it has to get better. The recruiting has to get better at linebacker. But I trust Mike Norvell's evaluation of Randy as the coach versus the recruiter. If he feels like it needs to be replaced, I think that it's time to make the switch. Yeah. If he feels like the play on the field is good enough and they can live with it, maybe. But I think to be to that elite level, if you want to be with the Georgias and the Alabamas, you're going to have to figure something out. Yeah. Because even if you look at the guys that, okay, well, who's the last blue chip guy we landed? Well, it's Blake Nicholson. That was a great grab. That had a lot to do with Derek Ray and that California connection. Right. He was really the guy that pulled off that commitment. So it's not great. I mean, I know Randy's been in on a lot of – this is what's so confusing too. Like when you look at the 247 recruiter rankings, because they will rank like actual coaches, he's in on a lot of these South Florida recruits. And we know that's a part of the reason why he was added to the staff, that South Florida connection. It's just he struggles to land players at his own position. Now, of course, you still have a 4-star linebacker already in this class, so we can't take that away from him either. Right. But I don't know, man. A change may be needed. I don't think it's going to happen before the end of the season. But like I said, man, I think the fire alarm's been pulled. I just don't think the building's on fire yet.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think I gave you the analogy that the fire alarm's been pulled because there's a trash can fire next to a curtain that's occurring right now. That's what it kind of feels like to me. It feels like the fact of the matter is that Brandon Shannon is on, as you said, he's in on all these Southward recruits because he used to coach there. He coached at Miami, he played at Miami. So there's so many connections. The problem is that at the position in which he's assigned to coach and recruit and to land, he is struggling to land those kids. Now, again, the Pritchard kid, the 4-star linebacker there, he did get him. So we got to make sure we give him credit for that. Right. We also have to make sure we give credit to Brandon Shannon for the development of the linebackers. They have played better, right? You remember when linebacker was the thing that we were just like, please just don't mess up the play. Please just be in the right spot, right? Yep. And now not only in the right spot, they're making tackles, they're making game-changing plays. Like you're seeing that. Now, again, of course, some of them were transfers with Tatum Bethune, and then also long-term development with DJ Lundy and Galen Deloge. Yes, but those are development by Randy Shannon, okay? Right. And so we have to give him credit for that as well, too. But just as we give credit, we also have to call out, you have to call a spade, and he has missed on several linebacking recruits. And so I think yes, you can give the extenuating circumstance of the one kid that was from Washington and, grew up there, and that makes it easy for them. The other kid was, you never were in the lead in the first place. Miami was pretty much always going to get him. But this was a kid that you were leading the entire way. Now, again, we don't know because we're not insiders. We don't have all that. We don't have spies at Arkansas to tell us exactly what Arkansas did. But to be behind, to be not even thought of as in second place. I mean, it was really Florida State and Georgia were the two that were like neck and neck, with Florida State pretty much leading all the way. And then for like this team out of nowhere to come in, it makes you, the only logical conclusion is two things. Either one, Florida State backed off, which from all indications didn't seem like they did. No. Or two, Arkansas dropped a massive bag to this kid to get this kid to sign. Now, it doesn't make sense to me, Jesse, why, if you're on the cusp of being fired, which everybody knows, everybody that pays any little bit of attention to college football knows that this Arkansas staff is probably right there, either 1A or 1B of staff that's going to be fired, why you would spend NIL dollars on a linebacker who is not really like, and this is no offense to the kid, but he's not like unless your linebackers are just terrible, he's not like a day one starter type of linebacker, right? He's probably a special teams guy. He's getting in on third downs, maybe, I don't know, second down. He can play, but he's not like day one NFL ready right now. Like we need to drop all of our NIL dollars on. And yet this staff that basically probably will be fired at the end of the season, could be one of the options is that they dropped a huge bag on this. And I just think that this kid, coming out of high school, this is a lot of money if that is what happened. And so he says, yeah, okay, I'll go here. And then you just think, if you're Florida State, you're just thinking like, okay, I mean, wow, that sucks, but he'll probably be in the portal in the next year. So
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think this is a prime portal candidate that you could land later on. Let them feed them and get them some workouts for a year, and then we'll take them out of the portal. Right. But we'll send them to a farm team for a little bit. But at the same time, it's like you hate to just assume it's always NIL. Maybe he just loves the coach. Exactly. Maybe it's just a great connection. But
correct.
Crazy things happen because we just basically stole a kid in CJ Wiley from Georgia.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Everybody thought they were going to land. It was a huge surprise. So this is just high school recruiting, man. It happens this way sometimes, but I think it's, like you said, I think the big head scratcher is the fact that it was Arkansas. It was the fact that if it was NIL, you just went and spent a lot of money on a recruit that's not going to pay off until after you've probably been fired. And I don't know, man, maybe they're taking like the Florida approach because had Napier not have got Lagway, maybe he's not even the coach there as well. So maybe if you put together a really good recruiting class and maybe this guy is like the best recruit that you feel like you can get some momentum with, then maybe you do that to try and save your job for another year. But
that's right.
Either way, like we said, I still think until, you mentioned this earlier, until the ink dries on that NLI, you can still go get him. And so you could still flip him. So you just have to wait and see how things play out. But it was bad for the perception of your program. Yeah. That's all it was. It was just bad to lose. But again, so did Georgia. So did Florida. Yeah. So we're going to let that lead us into another conversation. But while we're talking about the recruits, let's just round this that part of the conversation out. Just taking a look at this class real quick. So you are up to 10 commitments now. You finally hit double digits. you still have less than pretty much everybody around you. Most everybody has 13 to up to 20 recruits or more. So you're holding your own against a lot bigger classes. Still a 100% blue chip ratio. The 2025 class, according to the 247 composite, you are currently ranked 25th and 5th in the ACC. They've made a massive jump. I think before we recorded the last episode, we were around 57 or something like that. Now, at one point, Florida State did lead the country in the average player rating, which, again, quality over quantity. We talk about that all the time. You are still adding, from the last time we talked about this, you've added 4 recruits, I believe, since the last time we talked about it. You're still 5th. You're still top 5, according to the 247 composite, in player average rating. So the quality is still there. According to the On3 industry rankings, you are at 9th and 2nd in the ACC. And over there, we are 4th in average player rating. So the quality, again, man, the quality remains in this class. Yeah. And again, most of the guys that they're in on now, if you start missing on a couple options, you may have to go down to like a 3-star here and there. Right. But most of the guys they're still in it for are blue chip recruits. So this class, if they land a lot of the guys, and we've seen surprises both ways now, good and bad. But if you land a lot of the guys that you feel good about, this class can be, again, transformative. It can be that top 10 class for them as well. And that's what they need coming off that big season. I just think we're going to have to see a lot of things play out on the field. While I'm talking about it, we did also pick up a 2026 3-star DB commit, Tredarius Hughes, 6'2", 170. I like the 6'2" already as a young kid out of Homestead, Florida. Again, a South Florida recruit, planting your flag in South Florida. 354 nationally, 32 ranked DB, 64th in Florida. Not going to go super in-depth on a 2026 recruit, but yeah, man, overall for your 2025 class, even though you're adding commitments, the quality remains. And you've jumped into the top 25 of the composite rankings. You're still in the top 10 in On3 industry rankings. So, again, as long as they stay in these recruiting battles, as long as they have a good season, man, this class is going to be real special. So I'll let you share some overall thoughts on this class, and then we'll get into a little bit of NIL and recruiting talk on some of the good and the bad of how we feel about this recruiting.
Yeah. Listen, congrats to Patrick Surtain on another 2026 DB. I think right now that class, according to On3, the 2026 class is ranked number 1 in the nation. Now,
and it's early. 247 as well.
Yeah, it's early, and so, but it's pretty cool to be number 1 right now. In that, I think this overall class. I mean, I've heard around that they're going to look at probably high school numbers is probably somewhere between 15 is 18 high school kids, and then obviously the transfer portal, which if you're not including transfer portal kids into the ranking into the class ranking and understanding that, then what are we doing here? Because really, it is all about let's put Clemson aside. Most schools now, even Michigan, even Georgia, even they're having little small transfer portal class. Florida State has about what I would say is small to medium. About that 8 to 10 range is usually what they're bringing in, somewhere around there. I mean, this is not like Louisville that had like 25 transfer portals that came in last year, and I think right now they're up to like 17 for this upcoming year or something like that. Like, it's just wild. But I think Florida State probably have that 15 to 20 so high school kids, and then that 8 to 10 transfer portal. And I think that's what you're going to kind of see moving forward with this Florida State model. Now, again, Mike Norvell was ahead of the curve, and then everyone else started jumping in to the whole transfer portal thing along with the high school recruits. And I just think that it's a smart strategy. And I just think that the 2025 class, you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see elite high school recruits, and then you're going to see that paired with either experience or college ready players who've been in the college systems from the transfer portal come together. And that's what you're going to kind of see moving forward.
Oh, 100%. And by doing the portal side of things, you allow these high school recruits to season a little bit, like you said. Right. So when they get to the field, they're ready to go. And, I know this class is really important for Florida State because you're coming off that 13-win season. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, you won 13 games and you don't have a top 5, top 10 class. Well, first off, it could end up there. I mean, it's top 10 in the On3 industry, and it could end up top 5. Who knows? Depending on how many players they get. Again, a lot of that depends on how many you sign. And if they sign 20 or less kids, you may just not accrue enough points to end up there. But that doesn't really matter. To me, it's about who you get in the class. But my thoughts on this, and we can let this lead us into the last segment of the show here, talking about some just overall thoughts on recruiting. people say you're coming off that 13-win season, and I get it. In society today, we're prisoners of the moment.
That's right.
That 13 wins opens a lot of eyes. That's how you get some of these big recruits. But you also have to think, man, that this staff is still building those long-term relationships.
That's
a lot of these kids that are in this 25 class, these programs started recruiting them when Florida State was 5-7.
That's
so
right.
Like you see the climb, but they also have other programs that have been in on them as well. So really the 2026 class is kind of where you're going to start to see the success on the field pay off, because they've had time to sell that. They've only had time to sell to this 2025 class a 13-win season for what, 6 months, 7 months?
Yeah.
So that's going to take time as well. So I think if they just back it up with another good season this year, then you give that convincing, you give the evidence of the climb, where we're headed, where we're going, the future direction of this program, and that's what you're going to be able to sell. But talking about that, the Tavion Wallace and the NIL and all this stuff, you brought up a good point before the show, and I'll let you take the lead on this. But when we talk about some of these bigger recruitments and NIL battles that you might get in, and we talk about, we were talking about how, like, you see things with Texas where they're got 6 Lamborghinis lined up outside the facility. Now, the conversation that we had was, you see a lot of schools do that. I mean, you see like Virginia Tech, and I got nothing but love for that program. Great fan base, all that good stuff. But when you talk about Virginia Tech, I saw they just got a commitment the other day of a 4-star DB out of Virginia, and he was posing in front of a Rolls Royce on their field. You're just not going to see that in Tallahassee. It's a different approach, man. They don't need to do that. A program like Virginia Tech or maybe South Florida or whoever, like, these programs are trying to rebuild, trying to recover a once great program, trying to fight, claw, and scratch for every recruit that they can get. Texas maybe doesn't have to do that. They do it because they can. They can offer you a lot more, but they're going to flex their money too, because it's one of the most wealthy programs in the country. But you don't see that at a whole lot, and you don't see it in Tallahassee, because we offer other things. This is Florida State. You're not coming here because of the NIL structure. Now, that's a big part of it. We saw we saw a member of the 2025 class, and I can't remember, it's one of the lineman commits, even said, I can go other places and get more money, but it's about the development. It's about making it to the league. It's about the staff around, who's coaching here. It's about this program. So, I mean, this is Florida State. You don't have to do all those silly tactics to try and get recruits in the boat. But when you're talking about the battles in, we know that they're a great collective. We love that they're smart about it. They don't get into bidding wars. They're not paying $13 million like the Gator Collective was to a quarterback or whatever. But if you're going to say that I'm glad they don't do that, if other teams do, you can't be mad that we miss out on some recruits in that NIL-driven situation. So again, like, I hate to speculate, and I'll kick it to you on this, but I hate to speculate that every kid that doesn't commit to Florida State is NIL. We can't say that. Because we just don't know. But we don't know that it's not either.
That's right.
And so if you see like a program, say it comes out that Arkansas pays $1.5 million for Tavion Wallace, you'd be like, oh, let him go. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But because there's no transparency, we'll probably never know that. But if that was the case and the battles didn't pass and they didn't get into that bidding war, well, kudos to them. It's not worth it. You can go put your money in a better spot. And so, but that means you're probably going to lose a couple of these. So I know you had some great thoughts on this, and I'll kick it to you to let you share them.
Well, here's the thing, and this is where I'll start is first, Jesse, we're not making fun of those programs that, need to, or that want to, or need to bring out the Lamborghinis and the Rolls Royce. Look, if that's going to win you a kid, then by all means, do what you need to do to try to get you a recruit, right? Because the name of the game is recruiting and winning. And at the end of the day, you're going to be judged by how many, what that number is under the W versus what that number is under the L's, right? And so if you got to do that, Texas, you got the money, go ahead and do that. Virginia Tech, you need to do that to try to reestablish your program, go ahead and do that. Even if Mike Norvell needed to do that, then I would say do it, right?
But we should have done it in like 21 and 20.
Exactly, when we were desperate for recruits, And the thing is, if you look at the history under Mike Norvell of recruiting, you had the 2020 season when they couldn't really recruit except via Zoom, right? And literally, and all they could do was tell the hope of Florida State. This is what we hope to do, right? Then in 2021, they went from hope to, you see how desperate we are? We need you. You're going to get playing time. Then from 2021 to 2022, you say, we're building, and if you come, you can be a part of what we're building, right? Then after the 22 season, it says, Here's the proof in the pudding. Look, we told you back in 2020 of our hopes and dreams. We told you in 2021 we desperately needed you. We told you in 2022 that there's proof in the pudding. Now look at that play out, right? And now they're selling 2023. We went 13-0 basically before we got screwed and lost the last game. We went 13-0. We've been showing steady improvement, and now you can become and be a part of an elite program again. That's what they're working with, right? Again, this is not every college football program. You're not going to come to Tallahassee and say, I want $1 million before. Actually, first, I want $100,000 just to come visit your school. And then I want $1 million to actually sign at your school. The battle's end, which has been not just by us here at Plant the Spear, not just by any other outlets, but in the country, it has repeatedly been said that Florida State has one of the best NIL structures and collectives in the country. Out of all 130 something schools out there that have NIL collective, Florida State has one of the best because they have understood and figured out, as well as they possibly could, the market on how do we play high school players, how do we pay transfer portal players, and how do we pay as far as retaining our players currently, roster retention. Those are three facets of NIL collectives. Now, there was
and I will say, to add to that real quick, because you talk about the way they do that, keep in mind, players have tried to press them for money before.
Correct.
And they told them to kick rocks.
Bye.
So, I mean, we've seen examples of that before where they're not going to get into a bidding war. They're not going to let you just bend them over for a blank check. They're not going to do that.
Correct. And to go to your point about Rodney Hill, he left because he thought he was going to get more money, went to FAMU. That fell apart. Where did he end up at?
I think it was like Miami or something, then back to FAMU.
And then, back to FAMU. And then he tried to come back to Florida State. Now, that's speculation, but it's out there. He's tried to come back. And Mike Norvell even speculated to this point. He said, there have been players who tried to even come back. And he said, you know what? No, it's just better that we move on. He was one of them.
Right.
That's the thing. They've understood that there are three segments to this NIL deal, that you've got to understand how much we're going to pay high school recruits, how much we're going to pay transfer portal recruits, and how much we're going to pay to retain our roster currently. That's why, and Jesse, you pointed this out in the pre-show, we don't see a lot of key players leaving and transferring out at Florida State. Why? Because Florida State understands the NIL market. Okay. Now, there was a post I saw that I thought was intriguing but also misleading, and the post was basically the writer said that in order to get a top 10 class, you're going to have to pay for a top 10 class, and that's going to translate to wins and successes, right? That was his argument, that unless you pay these high school recruits, you're not going to do that. And his argument was that Mike Norvell just needs to get over and start paying these kids, or we're going to keep missing out on these big name recruits. We're going to keep having these flips like KJ Bolin and Travis Hunter and all like that. The Falk kid that went to Auburn, that's going to keep happening to us. And so what he did is he did research and he went back. And so in 2021, he found that the top average NIL per player school was Alabama at $224,000. Florida State came in at 21st at $99,000 average per player. Okay. Then in 2022, Bama was number one at 191. So it kind of went down a little bit. Georgia was 3 at 217,000 per average per player. Florida State went significantly down to 23rd at 44,000 average per player. Okay. Then in 2023, Florida State was ranked 22nd with 43,000 average per player. Bama was number one at 175,000. Okay. 2024, Georgia was ranked 250,000 per player. Florida State was 12th with 127. And currently for the 2025 class, Ohio State is ranked first at 191,000 average per player, and Florida State is ranked 10th at 150,000 per player. Now, where he's getting this data, I'm assuming he's collecting it through all the recruiting services and trying to see where they're at. But here's the thing, though. While Florida State has not been the top paying NIL program in the country, look at the win-loss totals moving. Okay, so 2021, what did Florida State do? I think they went 5-7, right? Mm-hmm. Then in 2022, they went 10-3. Then in 2023, they went 13-1, right? And then we're walking into the 2024 season where I mean, we did our post spring record prediction, and I think we're somewhere both around 11-1, 10-2 at the somewhere in that sense, right? So, I mean, the wins look like they're going to be there again, and so the argument is almost in a sense contradicting itself. Yes, you still have to get elite high school recruits. The problem is, why would you pay them top dollars, Jesse, when they've not been in a college weight room. They've not seen a college. They've not seen a college yearbook. Playbook. They've not.
They're not in a college yearbook either.
They're not in a college yearbook either. They don't have any college stats. All we're basing it off is what we see in the star rating system and film and production in the high school rate. Why would you pay them more than you pay a transfer portal candidate who's been in a college weight room, who's seen a college playbook, who's probably have college stats and been on the field of a college game before? Why would you pay them more than the transporter kid? And then why would you definitely pay them more than you would pay a star on your team, roster retention, right? Going to grow, going to get better, developing, all of that stuff. Now, yes, you're going to have to pay a little bit more than what you probably like. And I'm sure there are certain high school kids that Florida State is willing to, I won't say open the bag, but they're willing to open it just a little bit more because they know that this kid can make a huge difference. But man, Florida State is not going to overpay for players. And so you look at this Wallace kid situation. Let's say it was NIL, right? And let's say, Florida State, let's just say Florida State offered him, $500,000. And he's like, great, I love it. And they're leading. Arkansas comes in the last minute and says, we're going to give you $900,000. And so he calls Florida State and says, hey, Arkansas is going to give me $900,000. Florida State's going to say, good luck, kid. We'll see you in the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. And honestly, you could probably get them cheaper at that point.
Correct.
And so I agree, man. And this is something that I made an example of on a couple episodes ago where I was like, man, as much as I love high school recruiting, I love the portal because you look at the whole KJ Bolden situation. You spent years investing in that recruitment. You probably offered a pretty decent amount towards the end there because, I mean, let's just get this out of the way. Florida State might not overpay for people, but they're paying for people.
They're paying for people.
Everybody's doing it. So
yes,
Florida State's paying for people too. But then you look at he may turn out to be the best safety to ever play the game. We don't know that.
Right.
But that's the thing. You also don't know that.
Right.
Whereas Florida State went out and got Jamie Robinson, I believe from the time they offered to the time he committed was something crazy like 10 days, 13 days or something like that. You probably got him for a lot cheaper than you did KJ Bolden, or you would have KJ Bolden.
Right.
And he was an all ACC player that led your team in tackles 2 years in a row.
Correct.
So again, you were able to evaluate him off college film. And now that doesn't mean that player is going to be better because there was a guy in the comments that was a Miami fan on our last episode that said that they signed some 3-star DB from Marshall who's better than Earl Little Jr. because he sat on the bench, and this kid played for Marshall, started for Marshall, and had film to go off of. And I was like, dude, that's not even remotely same situation. You had
not even
a blue chip high school recruit sitting behind one of the best. I mean, the safety that they had last year, his name's slipping my mind right now, but All-American, all SEC, Caleb Downs that just went to Ohio State. I mean, again, it's a completely different situation. Yep. You can still have these guys that are big-time high school recruits that are better than what you're getting out of the portal. Correct. It just depends on the scenario. But like you said, I think it comes down to, look, man, when they say fit and family, they're not messing around. It is important. And that's why I think you see, yes, players have left Florida State. Yes, talented players have left Florida State. But you haven't really seen Florida State lose an impactful player.
Yes.
Talking about Arkansas, I mean, KJ Jefferson, their starting quarterback, hit the portal. Look at Florida. The ETN kid just left for Georgia, left to their rival.
Richie Leonard came here. Yes.
Right. Like, you haven't really seen any guys who were great players leave. And a lot of the ones where you got spurned on the last day, I mean, you're doing better than Auburn. You're doing better than Colorado. Right. Maybe not Georgia, but you're getting back to that level of competitiveness. And again, I think it does really lean on the on-field performance. That was so hard for them. Again, we talked about this last episode, and I'll just share the numbers here. In 2020, your blue chip percentage of your class was 23.5%. You signed 8 blue chips. 2021, it went up to 31%, and you had, because you could recruit in person.
That's right.
You signed 9 blue chips. 2022, you're recruiting off the back of 2 terrible seasons. 29% took a little dip. you signed 9 blue chips. 2023, you had a little bit of glimpse of hope there. They finished the season strong. You had that 10-win season. It jumped to 54.8%, 17 blue chips signed. And then 2024, it jumped again to 62.5%, 25 blue chips signed, the most blue chips out of the portal of any in the country with 10. Your 2025 class is 100% blue chip ratio with 10 blue chips committed already. So they have been able to be successful on the trail without doing all that extra stuff, without all the fluff. So you just hope that what they're doing is enough to get you to that elite level. That's the thing. I think you've done really good with where you're at, but now you got to take that next step. But again, man, look, as great as FSU is doing now compared to where we were, you still don't really have the money of the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. You just don't. And, they just Florida State again, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Florida State is still a relatively young university. Their alumni base, their fan base is big, but it's not as old and deeply rooted as some of these programs that have been around for 100 years. And so they are able to throw that money around. They are in a better conference that pays more money. So Florida State is they're going to hit on some, they're going to miss on some. But the thing is, you've seen the proof that they can win with a less talented roster. Go back and watch our last episode. We did a whole segment on that. So now once they get these kids and they do it wisely, again, you're keeping kids in the boat.
That's right.
And the more kids you keep on the boat, the less emphasis you have to put on going out and finding replacements. So you spend the money wisely. And again, they're not going to be taken advantage of. We've seen that time and time again. So I think there is a method to the madness of what's going on in Tallahassee. I think that you're going to see them miss on a few, and I don't think it's the end of the world. But overall, I think they're doing great. I mean, again, you have I hate using the word elite because I think we use the word elite too much nowadays.
Yeah.
But you have daggone good or RIP Bobby Bowden, dadgum good talent.
That's right.
At the most important positions, stacking going forward. So I'm excited to see what they can do. And again, it's really going to be big what they do this season because if they can make the playoffs and all that, and it doesn't look like the only reason you were good, because this is the narrative right now. The only reason you were good is because you had like 50 bajillion players come back. If you go out and repeat that success, man, I think you're going to see that process being sold because, like you said, you went from literally couldn't recruit in person at all to please come help. Please. This is a great program. We need help. To now, like, you see what we're doing. You see how we feature these guys. You see how we turn portal players into all conference players, into NFL draft picks. You see how we turn high school players into these types of players as well. So, man, as long as there's no unforeseen fall off, which we don't see happening, I think things will keep going. No, you might not be the number one class over Georgia and Alabama every single year, but you're winning at a level that those programs are with, really, frankly, outside of the top 10. So if you can get a consistent top 10 class, I mean, the Jimmies and the Joes are very important, but you've been kind of winning without them. So if you can get a higher percentage of them, you're going to be in a good position in the future.
Correct. And I just want to say this too. First of all, as you see the blue chip ratio, Jesse, that you went through, I mean, already the number one class currently in 2026 Florida State has right now has an 80% blue chip ratio right now. 80%. Okay. Now, we don't know if it'll stay there, but we're just saying, right? The other thing I wanted to say is that Michigan proved this past season.
Great example.
That you don't have to be the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, whatever it is, top 10 high school recruiting class to win a national title. They've not been in the top 10 at all. And yet they've developed, they found the right players for their system, and their system beat and dominated and all the way to a national championship. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm not saying that it's okay when Florida State has a miss. I'm not saying it's okay when Florida State has the Travis Hunters and the KJ Boldens and the Falk situation. No. We've got to get those corrected. I'm not saying it's okay that Florida State missed out on that Wallace kid. No. We've got to figure out why that's happening. But what we are saying, and one thing else, we're not saying that Florida State ain't paying people. Don't say that. Please don't hear that Plant the Spirit saying that Florida State's cheap and we ain't paying. No. We pay. Trust me, we pay. But we're just not going to leverage the bank and spend all of our NIL dollars on the fact that for these kids that we don't know if they can produce and be the player that we think they are versus what we do know. And Jesse, I made this point and I'll make it again. You and I are both proud members of the Battles End Collective, right? And there are many of you watching this right now who are proud members of Battle End Collectives, right? And if Florida State went out and paid, 7-figure salary to get this kid to come to Florida State, and he turned out to be a dud, how many of you are going to continue to donate to Florida State Battles End Collective? I know I'm not. So I want to know, even though we don't know what's being paid, I want to know that they're using their money wisely. And so far, to me, Jesse, maybe to you too as well, it seems like the Battles End, again, every year, every time we hear so much about how great, how one of the best collectives in the country is Florida State NIL Collective with the Battles End. To me, okay, we miss out on a kid. Let's figure out from the coaching standpoint, if there's a problem, let's try to fix it. But if it's not, if it was just purely money, this wasn't one of those, we've got to have those kind of players, then you know what? I ride with the Battles End all day.
No, I'm 100% with you. It's almost like I made the joke earlier when we were talking about this. Like you wish they would send you a shareholder report to kind of see where we're at, but you want them to spend their money wisely. But at the end of the day, if you want your shareholder report, look at what they've done. They've retained a lot of these guys. They got a lot of guys to put off the NFL last year to come back, and the win-loss column is where it counts. And so far, we're doing well there. Now, I did want to touch on something that you said. I was looking it up while you were sharing that last bit. Michigan, since 2021, has only finished with a top 10 class one time, and it was 9th. One time in the last from 2024 to 2021. So again, they showed that you can do it. It's just, I think they used the portal a little bit, maybe not quite like us, but again, man, what they're doing in Tallahassee has worked so far. And again, we say this 100 times over, but it still holds true. People will talk about the process and where things are at with Florida State recruiting in Tallahassee, but had Jordan Travis not have got injured, or because who knows what they would have done if they'd have got in. But if they'd have got in with Jordan Travis, we could be talking about Florida State trying to defend their national championship right now. You just don't know what would have happened. And we feel like they had a good chance. I know. Like, it's sad, but it's like, again, he's taken this program following the same method. Like, it wasn't like we had Lambos, then we took them away. We didn't have them. Now we have them. They've stuck to the same process. This was something where this is what inspired the fiery press conference. This is what has Mike Norvell, when people wanted him fired, people were really putting him under a microscope. It was like, look, man, everyone always says he never switched up. He always stayed the same. He always believed in the same process. They always went about things the same way. He's consistent all the time. And you went from 3-9 to 13-1 with that methodology. Now,
in 4 years, guys, 4 years.
In 4 years, right? Could have been, 15-0. Who knows? Whatever. But you caught a bad break in the year that you didn't need to catch a bad break. Right. But it happens. But again, the method that you're doing is paid off. So I don't see a reason to change anything. I don't see a reason to hit the panic alarm or anything like that. I think it's all fine. And again, you may end up with the kid that you lost that you hit the panic alarm for anyway. So with that being said, that's pretty much going to do it for us here. I thought that was a pretty productive conversation on recruiting and everything. Recruiting is so stressful, man, but it is fun to talk about. It is still the lifeblood of college football. Yep. Obviously the portal has changed things with that. I know some people don't love the portal approach, but that's like saying an NFL team can only take players from the draft and you can't find free agents. Well, that wouldn't do you any good.
That's right.
So again, they've been ahead of the curve on that as well. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. If you're listening on podcast form, rate and review would help get this out to everybody else. Again, we're leading up to the season, so we're trying. I'm telling you guys, behind the scenes, my keyboard is on fire because I'm trying to type up so much stuff, so much preseason content that we're going to be rolling out soon for you guys because it's getting close. Make sure you check out Alumni Hall FSU, our sponsor for this episode. We are so grateful to be able to work with those guys to help keep the lights on around here. So go check those guys out. 1415 Timberlane Road in Tallahassee, alumnihall.com. Use code SPEAR to get 10% off, and we will catch you guys on the next one. As always, go Noles.
Go Noles.